All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to tear down the ideas in Stephen Bartlett's Happy, Sexy Millionaire. We're talking about why that modern checklist for success feels like a total trap, and how the real secret to a fulfilling life isn't about getting more stuff, but about playing a completely different game. And this quote right here, this is the whole problem in a nutshell. I mean, can you imagine? You take every single box you've ever set for yourself. You're a multimillionaire, you're successful, you've made it, and then nothing. That feeling you were chasing your whole life just isn't there. This is exactly where our whole discussion starts, with that massive, empty feeling of winning the game and still losing. So what gives? Where did it all go wrong? Well, Bartlett argues that we've all been sold this massive lie. Society tells us to play life like a finite game. You know, a game with a clear finish line where happiness is the big, shiny trophy at the end. But that whole checklist approach, it's a trap, and it's designed to keep us running and running, always feeling like we're not quite there yet. And what's wild is how normal this list sounds, right? This was Stephen Bartlett's personal checklist. It's that classic happy, sexy millionaire formula we're all fed. And get this, he did it all, way ahead of schedule. But that happiness he was promised, it never showed up, which just goes to show the checklist itself is broken. Okay, so to really get why that checklist is such a disaster, we have to look inside our own heads. Because the problem isn't just society, it actually starts with us. Bartlett gives us this brilliant idea to explain our own internal saboteur. He calls it the lazy CEO of our brain. So the favorite #1 tool of this lazy CEO is relativity. See, our brains are not wired to just know what $1 million feels like. Nope. Instead, they figure out what something is worth by constantly comparing. My house to their house, my job to their job, my life to their perfectly filtered life on social media. This was a great tool for survival, thousands of years ago, but for modern happiness, it's a complete catastrophe. And this right here really breaks down that battle happening in your head. On one hand, you've got your slow, logical, rational mind. But most of the time, the lazy CEO is the one behind the wheel. It's just running on autopilot, making these super fast judgments based on biased comparisons. It's a system that's perfect for, say, spotting a lion on the savannah, but it is just terrible at scrolling through Instagram without feeling miserable. So here's the bottom line. We are running ancient software on modern hardware. These mental shortcuts that kept our ancestors alive by making them obsessed with status and comparison are the very same things that are making us unhappy in a world where we can compare ourselves to literally millions of people with a single swipe. Now, here's the kicker. This flaw in our brains doesn't just exist on its own. Oh no, it is being actively hacked by a massive external force. If our brain is the hardware, you can think of social media as the software that is specifically designed to exploit its weaknesses and pull us into this never-ending, unwinnable status game. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The data is pretty clear on this one. This study found that Instagram, a platform built almost entirely on comparing how things look, was the absolute worst for our mental health. It's like the perfect playground for our brain's lazy CEO to just run wild and convince us that we are never, ever good enough. I mean, think about it. The algorithms are built to reward whatever gets the most attention, right? And that's usually the most extreme, over-the-top displays of wealth, or beauty, or success. It becomes a zero-sum game. For one person to win by posting their perfect vacation photo, the algorithm has to make thousands of other people feel like they've lost. Okay, but before we jump into the solutions, we have to hit pause. It's so important to talk about a major criticism of this whole idea. Some critics point out, and it's a really fair point, that this entire framework comes from a place of survivorship bias. I mean, the advice to just write your own rules is coming from a guy who already won the game society set up. For a lot of people just trying to make ends meet, these ideas can feel like a total luxury. It's just a really vital piece of context to keep in mind. So, knowing all that, with these internal and external traps everywhere, how in the world do we fight back? Well, Bartlett's first big solution is an internal one. It's a simple but incredibly powerful tool to basically fire that lazy CEO. He calls it the gratitude switch. This story says it all, doesn't it? The absolute joy of finding just enough money to eat for a day when he was totally broke, that gave him a bigger emotional hit than a $200 million valuation. And why? Because finding those 13 pounds solved a real fundamental need. The 200 million, that was just another number for his lazy CEO to compare to the next billionaire. It proves that happiness isn't about how big the number is. It's all about context. So how do you actually flip this switch? It's a super simple, actionable habit. This isn't just about thinking happy thoughts. It's a real practice. And being specific is everything. Writing, "I'm grateful for my sister," is fine. But writing, "I'm grateful for how my sister sent me that hilarious meme today that made me laugh at my desk," that's what actually starts to rewire your brain, because you're tying the feeling to a real concrete moment. And listen, this isn't some fluffy self-help stuff. This is a legitimate neurological workout. Every single time you consciously practice gratitude, you are literally giving your brain a little hit of dopamine. That's the feel-good chemical. You are actively training your lazy CEO to find joy in what you already have instead of constantly looking at what you don't. It's basically an act of rebellion against your brain's default settings. Okay, so once you start getting your internal world sorted, the next step is to deal with all that external pressure. And that means you have to actively reject society's script and all the toxic, limiting questions it keeps asking us. Bartlett calls these binary boxes. They're these questions that demand a simple yes or no for these huge, messy, complicated parts of being human. They trick you into thinking there's one single right answer out there, one true passion, one soulmate that you're supposed to just find. And that creates so much anxiety when our real lives, of course, don't fit into those tidy little boxes. And this quote, this really captures the massive mental shift in the whole book. Stop searching. Start creating. Your passion isn't some treasure you have to dig up. It's more like a house that you build, brick by brick, just by following your curiosity. A great relationship isn't something you find. It's something you create every single day with another person. This mindset puts all the power and all the responsibility right back in your hands. So let's boil it all down. What's the new playbook for this infinite game of life? First, the only person you should compare yourself to is who you were yesterday. That's it. Second, flip that gratitude switch every single day to literally rewire your brain for happiness. Third, be ruthless about curating your environment. Unfollow, mute, whatever it takes to protect your peace. Fourth, burn society's old script and start writing your own. And finally, the most important rule of all, you have to internalize that you are already enough right now. You see, this whole way of thinking isn't about reaching some finish line called happiness. It's about changing the entire way you play the game of life. So that really just leaves one last question, and it's for you. Looking at your own life, what's one rule, big or small, that you're going to create for yourself, starting today?